So in this video, I want to go over all the pros and cons of cutting. Obviously, there's both pros and cons to bulking and cutting. So this video is all going to be about the pros, the cons, the good, the bad of when you are trying to lose body fat. So first and foremost, let's start off with the pros. The first biggest pro when you are cutting, and you may not even realize this, but you actually look a lot bigger and obviously a lot leaner, a lot more defined when you are cutting, right? The thing that might surprise you there is you looking bigger. The reason why this is because when you are leaner, you're more defined, things start to pop more. There's more striations. You can clearly see your muscles. They're more visible than when they are covered by a layer of fat when you are bulking, right? So this is probably one of the coolest or one of the biggest pros is just looking better, looking leaner, and you actually look bigger even though you might be 10 pounds lighter than when you were peak bulk, right? Which is kind of interesting because again, everything kind of pops more and looks fuller when there's less fat covering it. So it gives kind of the illusion that you're bigger even though you may be lighter. So that's kind of the biggest, first and foremost, pro of cutting and losing body fat. The second major pro of cutting or losing body fat is more from a health standpoint and one that can really help you kind of build muscle down the line as well. And first and foremost, one of the biggest things is your insulin sensitivity, right? When you're leaner, you're a lot more sensitive to insulin. Your body's a lot more efficient at kind of nutrient partitioning and kind of bodily functions. Your body's just more efficient when it's leaner, right? So with that being said, what is insulin sensitivity? It's just how efficiently your body can use carbohydrates, use sugars, use glycogen. And again, it's a lot more efficient when it's leaner, and so you are a lot more sensitive to insulin when you are at a leaner body fat percentage. That's one of the biggest things. And with this, it's just a lot easier to kind of shuttle carbohydrates into your muscles. For pumps, it's a lot better. You're going to have a lot more pumps when you are less insulin resistant, and so on and so forth. A couple other things is probably lower blood pressure. You're not consuming as much salts and junks and stuff like that when you are cutting versus when you're bulking. Obviously, the volume of food is a lot less, so it's easier on your system to digest and kind of utilize those nutrients. So from a health standpoint, you might feel better when you're cutting. You're not going to be stuffed all the time. You're going to be less insulin resistant, lower blood pressure, and just a whole host of other just overall general well-being health markers are improved when you have less excess body fat on your frame. And the third major pro of cutting is time, right? It is a lot faster to drop body fat, lose body fat, than it is to build muscle, right? Significantly faster. So just know that the rate of building muscle is way slower than the rate that you will lose fat. So you can expect to see major changes a lot faster cutting than you would when you're bulking, right? It is more than likely, it is a lot easier, I should say, to drop 20 pounds of fat in, let's say, 3 months than it would be to try to build 20 pounds of muscle, which is pretty much impossible in that same time period. So just know at the end of the day, cutting is a lot faster than it is to build muscle, and you can expect to see results significantly faster than you would when you're bulking. That is why most of the year I recommend, if you're a newer trainee, to be in a calorie surplus and bulking, just because it takes so much longer to build muscle than it does to drop fat. Now, obviously with pros comes cons, and one of the biggest cons of cutting is the way you feel in the gym, right? The pumps are nowhere near as good when you're cutting than they are bulking. You're not gonna feel as full. Again, the pumps are way worse, and that is because you don't obviously have as much resources, as much fuel when you're on a cutting diet versus when you're on a bulking diet, right? Your calories are a lot lower, your carbs are a lot lower, your salt's a lot lower. All these things contribute massively to your pump and your muscle fullness in the gym. So that's definitely one of the biggest drawbacks is, yes, you're gonna look better at the end of the day, but your actual performance, again, you're not gonna be breaking PRs when you're cutting, or it's unlikely you're gonna build strength or new muscle, again, unless you're brand new to the gym, then it's likely. But if you have a couple of years under your belt, it's more than likely you're not gonna get much bigger in terms of building new contractile tissue, new muscle, building strength, and feeling full, right? Those are things you're gonna expect when you're bulking, but not so much when you're cutting, again, because you don't have the additional excess resources when you're cutting. You don't have as much calories and carbs and salts and all that stuff that fuel those workouts, that fuel those pumps than you would when you're bulking. So again, you're not gonna kind of round off here, you're not gonna have as good of a pump, and your muscles aren't gonna be as full when you're cutting, and you can expect a lot of times when you're consistently a calorie deficit, you can look flat after a period of time. So that's when it's kind of important to do those refeed days that I talked about in the previous video to kind of help you with muscle fullness, kind of restoring those glycogens in your muscles and kind of helping you with your performance throughout the week. So yeah, that's the first major con is just muscle fullness, and pumps are not nearly as good as when you are bulking. And another major con of cutting that definitely goes overlooked, at least anecdotally from what I've seen, is you have to be a lot stricter with your diet when you're cutting versus when you are bulking, right? With cutting, you have to be in a calorie deficit if you want to lose fat, right? If you're not, no matter how much cardio you're doing, no matter how hard you're training in the gym, if you're not in a calorie deficit, you will not lose weight, period. Okay, so with that being said, obviously you gotta be more wary of how many calories and macronutrients you're consuming, because you have to be in a calorie deficit if you want to make progress and lose body fat, okay? With bulking, you have a little bit more leeway, because as long as you're in a calorie surplus, it's not gonna make much of a difference if you're 50 calories over, 100 calories over. As long as you're in a calorie surplus, you will make progress, you will gain weight. And so you have a little bit more leeway with food, because most people love food, most people love to eat, and so it's a little bit easier from what I've seen to be in a calorie surplus than it is to be in a calorie deficit, right? In a calorie deficit is when you get hungry, you start to get cravings, and you just want food all the time. So it's a little bit harder to adhere to that diet versus when you have excess food, maybe something you struggle to get that food in. So again, you have to be in a calorie deficit in order to make progress. And the final major con of cutting is the potential of losing muscle size, strength during your fat loss journey, right? Unless you are someone that's brand new to the gym, and I've touched on this in previous videos before, if you're someone that's brand new to the gym, it is more than likely that you can build muscle and lose fat at the same time, just because everything's so new to you, and it's the easiest time in your life to build muscle is when you're just starting off, okay? But besides that, if you're not brand new to the gym, then it is almost inevitable to lose some level of strength or muscle or size during a fat loss journey, okay? So obviously the goal is day one strength. The most ideal cut is to maintain your strength and your size throughout the cut, right? If you're able to do that, then you pretty much mastered the cut. But for most people, it is difficult to do that, because you have to be kind of focusing on your training. You have to be making sure that you're lifting the same amount of weight when in the gym when you start the cut versus when you're finishing the cut, okay? So it is more than likely you will lose some level of strength or size, but obviously you want to try your best to kind of minimize this by focusing on your training, making sure you're lifting as heavy as possible and kind of lifting as much as you were when you're bulking versus when you're cutting. And also obviously not going too drastic on your cut, not cutting your calories in half and doing hours of cardio and all that stuff, because all those things combined will definitely yield excessive muscle and strength loss. So obviously minimize how drastic you go and really aim to kind of keep your strength as high as possible in the gym to avoid too much muscle or strength losses.